Okay. Recording for episode 4 is a go. Yeah. That's right, we're doing a cold start. Get fucked, Lucas.
I just wanted to finish my ice cream.
Nope.
Okay.
No, that's part of the episode now. So, what are we talking about this week, Lucas?
We're talking about... I forgot. No. We are talking about problem solving. Specifically, in games. And
I'd hope so. I don't think we're qualified to do much else than that. I can't give you life skills.
You know, you're not wrong. Why you gotta be such a downer, Alec? You know, maybe they want to try and apply this to life skills. You can try and fail, but you can try at least. You just gotta shit on their parade.
You know, the best part is that you have the optimism to think that there will be a day consistently for this.
Dude,
there is.
there is a day.
There is a day. Which is nice.
I
appreciate that. Well, that's a great way to address this. So, problem solving. How to assess when you're at an impasse, recognizing how to move on from there, tactics for moving on from it, as in actually rectifying a situation, like retroactively fixing something. So, basically, rules enforcement or ways to use politics. Politics is the fun term for it because really you're just shouting at each other until one of you concedes. EDH.
Yeah. Ugh.
When we say politics, we don't mean it.
Yeah. I mean, it's politics broken down into its most base form, just screaming at each other until someone wins. Like, that's politics at its core. Someone wins and someone loses.
No, we all lost. Ooh. Now, on to why we'd even be arguing in the first place. When we've hit an impasse, what causes them, and just straightforward when to recognize that you're in a situation that can be remedied. So, very simply, if you're having a conflict at all, you're probably in a situation where things could be resolved if you just take a moment to look at it. So, arguing over rules, misunderstanding cards or misunderstanding the board state. Like, I like to loop back to Betrayal because that is probably one of the most fun examples where we got to yell at each other until someone agreed.
No one agreed. We just all quit.
Yeah. But no, that's a good situation to examine. So we take a look at just any situation really where, let's say in Betrayal, you've got these rooms that do their things. You've got these creatures, these monsters that are going around, and you're trying to figure out, well, do they get to do this? And the short answer usually is yes, but not the way that you might think. So, in the case of Betrayal, it's straightforward. You just have to step back, look at things top down, and slowly apply them. Now, we'll use that as an example for the flowcharts for how to fix things. Easy example of misunderstanding. Let's say you're playing a card game, doesn't matter which one really. Anything where you're playing a one-on-one or a free-for-all kind of setup where it's not cooperative for the most part. Let's say you play a card, someone reads your card, tries to do something, and you try to tell them that's not how it works. There's a lot of times that'll happen, and it is not fun arguing with someone when you know your deck in and out.
Yeah, it's really not fun. But if it's not competitive, because in most instances it's not going to be competitive. You get into a board game, you get into a card game. It's competitive at the level of the people playing there, but it's not. It's sanctioned.
Yeah.
Per se. And so the only place you can go is you can go back to the rulebook, or a lot of the time I personally go to the internet.
Yep.
People have run into these issues and they have solved, or they've been like, okay, we went through this, and this, and everyone is agreeing on this is how this works. So if you get a general overall consensus by the community, that's how it works. That is how it's going to work, unless, say, the actual creator comes out and says, no, that's not how it works.
I don't think I have an example of anyone stepping in like, Hold on, you're playing my game wrong.
Yeah, no, I just the only thing that comes to mind that's not game related is GIF and GIF. The creator says it's supposed to be pronounced GIF,
But graphical
but everyone says GIF. Like I think it's 70% of people say GIF.
Well, easy ways of recognizing you've gotten to a point where someone misunderstands something, you're not sure how certain things act. Now let's go on to problem solving. This is probably going to be a shorter episode because this is going a little faster than I thought, but
That's all right.
that'll work out in our favor. It means we can hopefully ramble without losing ourselves too much. So, let's talk about problem solving applications. Now, betrayal, probably one of my favorite things. You got to go flowchart style. I know Ben likes to break out the flowchart example with chains of stuff. That is a card that could get its own episode because it's the perfect example of this. But no, we're gonna stick with something that's a little bit more interesting. Playing betrayal.
Betrayal on the House on the Hill. No, sorry, at the House on the Hill. For those of you who didn't know.
So you're playing. You've gotten to the point where you've put down a lot of tiles. There's a lot of rooms that do things. And the haunt's begun. You moved into the point where someone's trying to do something, or in general, there's something that's trying to either stop you from escaping or kill you where you stand. Now, in some of those situations, you get NPCs, you get monsters, and you try to figure out, okay, so they always want to move towards me. That's just what they want to do. They want to kill me. Now, how do they do that? Let's say that there's a room that's got a hole in it, because there is one. The ghosts were where we gave up. Probably could have done better on that, but we gave up.
Mm-hmm.
So a ghost decides this is the way that it has to move. It goes into that room. And then you have to argue, was it going to go to the basement? Because the person who's controlling them preferably would want it to stay on the top floor so it can just slowly...
No, I wanted to go to the basement. So the scenario was, it was my first time playing, and it was mostly other people's only second time. They just sat down, one session, played a game, I joined in, and in Betrayal, there's one person, usually...
The betrayer.
The betrayer, who gets to, well, betray, for lack of a better term. And I was chosen that person because, based on the own role and what was revealed and everything, and... I got to be the madman, and I got to let ghosts in the house. So as I was letting ghosts in the house, at that time, this is before the expansion, so there's only 3 layers. There's the upstairs, the ground floor, and the basement. And everyone but me was in the basement at this time. And there was only 2 entrances to the basement. One was the Mystic Elevator. The Mystic Elevator is an elevator that you have to roll 2 dice, and... based on those dice, you get to move the elevator. And the only other way was to fall down this hole. So, as I'm letting these ghosts, I had to figure out a way for them and myself to get in the basement, because my goal was to kill them. And the ghosts had speed, so they did have a physical stat. But the text said that they only fought in mental. Which was strange. Like, I didn't know it wasn't the exact. I can't remember the exact text, but there was something. It didn't say that just fought in mental, but it didn't exactly say couldn't take physical damage either. And what happened was, the ghost went in a room. The room is just a hole in the floor as the tile, and you have to make a speed roll of 6+. And my ghost failed the speed roll, which I wanted it to, so it could fall in the basement and kill everyone. Would it had been argued that the ghost could not fall because it was ghost, even though it had a speed stat. So if you break it down, the room checks if you have a speed stat, and then you roll based on the speed stat.
So let's say this is where design versus function. Mm-hmm. So design flavor, you think ghost. They float. They preferably they don't fall. Mm-hmm. Like the room implies it's a fall. Like oh no, you opened up the door and it's a hole immediately. You have to save yourself from falling. That's where the flavor is. Functionally, it's just a hole. It's just a means for you to get down there.
Yes.
So that's where it was kind of fighting. So, for the people on the other end, they're like, flavor-wise, this shouldn't really work. A ghost isn't going to just open up the door, whoops-a-daisy. It's a ghost.
But then it got in the argument, this was not brought up at the time, but thinking now, if a ghost can fly, it would be able to fly down there.
Yeah.
However, due to the mechanics, it's still technically a fall.
Yeah.
And if you fall, based on the text, if you fail the speed roll, you take 2 dice of damage. Which is where the major argument came in, because it's like, okay, the ghost should not be taking physical damage at all, because it's not supposed to. And that was somewhere within the rules text. Not that it couldn't take physical damage, but something similar that didn't expressly say, oh, it can't take physical damage, but it fights in mental, does all this other stuff. Can it actually take physical damage? And we couldn't agree whether it would or not. And there's people on both sides of tables. It wasn't just me arguing that the ghost would or would not take damage. It was everyone, and it was about 50-50 whether or not all this would work together.
Yeah, and that's where first problem solving kind of situation flowchart. Just break it down simply, see where you're at to start with. Just follow the lines where they go. So, start at the top. You have a ghost. It's in that room. What does that room want to do? The room wants you to do a check. So the ghost will do a check because it can.
Yep.
Move on. Okay. Did the ghost succeed? Well, no. So the ghost has to do the next part of what it wants to do. It wants to fall. Now we move on to the fall. Now, does a ghost actually have physical properties that it's supposed to take damage in? Now in this case, this is where offhand you might not know, and it wouldn't hurt to double check the rules or double check with someone who played the game enough times or is actually a judge, because it never hurts to get a judge kind of situation.
Yeah, and not every game has judges though.
No,
This one does apparently. Betrayal apparently does have some.
It's a weirdly, like, you can play competitive. I shouldn't say competitive, but it's like competitive level enforcement, rule level enforcement in some of those cases.
And I never knew that until I went to a convention and they're like, yeah, there's a judge for betrayal here. We asked them to go switch. I was like, wait, there's a judge for this?
There's someone who is specialized in the rules of this. That's one thing, but to enforce them is another.
Yeah, it was.
It's one thing to be your own judge. It's another to be a judge for other people and be like, this is the law of the land. But no. This is where it gets into the, you can do 2 options. You can either look up the rules, or you can use politics, and you can try and come up with a house rule. The only thing is, as soon as you come up with a house rule, you stick by that. That is the only rule when it comes to that. If you make a house rule for consistency's sake, for the sake of everyone playing, so that way no one feels like, oh, you're just doing this because it helps you.
Mm-hmm.
Stick to rules. Monsters take physical if they have physical bodies. Would be an easy way to apply that. It's like, it doesn't have a physical body. It's floating. It shouldn't really take physical damage. Agreed. Play by that rule. Zombies are in the house. Well, zombies, they have physical parts. If they fall, they could feasibly mess up their legs and have to drag at a slower speed.
But do
Stick by
zombies
that.
take mental damage?
And again, you stick to a house rule.
Exactly. It's like, oh, they don't have brains. Okay, no mental damage. Depending on, of
If
course.
they have a stat. But no. Use a flowchart. Try and just see where you're at. Just one by one. Yes or no. What are the options? Where does that get me? And once you get to the bottom, if it still comes down to an argument, make a rule. Make a rule. Have everyone agree. And just make sure that it's something that becomes a house rule. Because if it becomes a house rule, people are willing to agree to it, because it means that if something iffy comes up later, it will be solved before it becomes a problem. Now, the misinformation. Now that's where it gets fun. So, Sylvan Library. Other cards like that. I just use Sylvan because it's one of those things. Some people will misunderstand that. It says that you get to draw 2 extra cards And out of the 3 total cards that you've drawn for your turn, you get to select to keep or put back. Some people will see it as a brainstorm if they don't really look at it, because they think it just goes to their hand and they pick from their hand.
Yes, brainstorm is draw 3 cards, put 2 back, and that's any card in your hand. Compared to Sylvan Library, it is only the 3 cards you've drawn at that point in the turn.
Now, it's easy to say that since we've played against Sylvan, we know that usually what people will do to make it nice and easy, they'll put down their hand, they'll pick up their 3 cards, and they'll keep those piles separate to make sure that no funny business goes on. Now, when you get to the point of, hey, don't mix those cards up. Like someone who's not used to using library, or not used to using a card that's in their deck. Like, I was uncomfortable with the mechanic in my deck that required me to make sure that I set the card aside or reveal it immediately, so that way there's no funny business, there's no one going like, okay, now you're just lying to me. No, I did do the thing, it's just I forgot. That's not how it works. No one's going to enjoy a game where there's a 50-50 chance that the person who's playing against you cheating or not being honest.
Yeah, I always check. Like, if it's, for example, a tutor in Magic that has specific text, like, oh, it has to be instant sorcery. I don't care if I'm playing casual. I don't care if I'm playing competitive. I'm revealing it, and I'm asking my opponent to reveal it. I can trust you 100%. I'm still going to ask you to reveal it.
Oh, what card? Oh, this.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that's where we can just do regular logic. So, just try to think, okay, what does the card want to do? What is the most optimal way to make sure that it doesn't get misconstrued? Sylvan Library says that, essentially, from the 3 that you looked at for that draw, you get to choose. What's the simplest way of making sure that that doesn't get mixed up? Well, just have them not touch the other cards. Feel free to put those cards down that you already had. Say that you're doing your Sylvan Library. Pick up 3. Take a look. Keep what you want. Pay for whatever you're keeping. Then bring the cards together. And again, there are more cards that can interact in ways where like first card you drew this turn, Miracle. If you know those cards are in your deck, go ahead and make a logical approach for figuring out how to make sure that doesn't get mixed up. First time that you miss it, own up to it. Just realize, I did this wrong. Like, oh, I drew Thunderous Wrath. I needed this to win the game. I messed up. I didn't reveal this. This got mixed in my hand. Well, I get to wait and keep picking up cards individually to make sure I don't make this mistake again. Separate what needs to be separated. Simple, logical approach. Now, what's another chess book? This would be a good time to break out the chess book. If you ever need to flex logic muscles,
Chess is a good place to go.
yeah, there's a lot of books out there, a lot of examples, where all you need to do to kind of get yourself going with logic puzzles, just to keep yourself sharp, make sure that you don't accidentally cause these kind of things to happen in the future when you can take a look at your situation and walk back from there. Puzzles are fun.
Puzzles are fun. We'll put a few in the description of various games, chess, magic, stuff like that.
Shogi's got quite a few because it's very similar to chess.
Anyways, I have a book of 5,334 problems because I was a major chess nerd in high school. So I like chess. I was indeed the captain, that is correct. Thank you. So, we have a problem here, which is number 74.
That's not very helpful for
I
him.
know, I was going to read who wrote this, but...
How about this? We're just going to say we've got a problem in our book. We'll flip open. What does the problem want us to do? It wants us to win the game in one move.
It does. It is white to move, and one move, white's turn, and we have to kill the king. So, we have a white king in H1. The enemy king is in H8. H8 is the only black piece on the board.
I think we could probably find a picture for this or make one.
We could. We have a white rook in A7. And we have a white knight. I just lost track of where it was. Hold on. In F6. So it's white's turn to move, and we know from top down we have to win this turn. In most games, you don't necessarily know you have to win this turn. We're given that as our problem statement, quote-unquote logic problem statement, win this turn. So what we're trying to do is try and checkmate the king. That is our top down. Next, we have to look at which pieces we can move. So it's white's turn. There's 3 pieces. Which pieces can we move? We can move the rook. We can move the knight. We can move the king. We'll look at the king first.
Well, the king doesn't really help us at all here.
It's good to evaluate. So at this point, the king, we look at the king. It's like, the kings are so far away, it's not going to do anything.
They don't impact the board state.
It does not impact the board state if we move the king at all. Disregard it. Doesn't matter.
Let's take a look at the knight.
If we look at the knight, there's a few places it can move.
It's got 2 places that it can lock down.
It is currently locking down 2 places. And if we move it, it will not be locking down those places. So we can move it right next to the king, which will not put the king in check at any point that we move it in. So if we look at that, that's not going to work because we need to put the king in check this turn, and we only have 1 move. If we have more moves, we could set it up with the knight theoretically, but we don't need to.
Here's probably an easier way of looking at the same problem. Where can that king move? Because that king's only got 3 spaces that it can move.
And currently, if we just pass the turn, it can't move anywhere, and that'll be stalemate. So if we move our king, which is basically a useless move, the game will end at stalemate. Because the enemy king cannot move based on our knight's position and our rook's position. So, if we look at the knight, again, okay, we move it somewhere, it kills it, or the enemy king kills it, or we move the knight away, and it does nothing. So, now that we evaluated every spot that the knight could go is not benefiting us, we can say that only the rook is the proper one to go with. So there's a few ways. We can move it up 1, which will put the king in check, which is what we want to do. We want to put the king in check. But if we do that, it leaves a space open afterwards. So say we move the rook up, check, the king can move still. It's not checkmate. So we want to go back, reevaluate. That's not the plan we want to do. So we can move. There's only one other way to put the king in check with the rook, because rooks can only move up and down, left and right, as far as they want. So we're going to go the other way. We're going to move it all the way to the right. So normally, if you move a rook right next to the king's just going to kill it. But our knight is strategically placed, so that is protecting our rook. And kings cannot put themselves in check. Therefore, the king cannot take the rook, and then it's checkmate.
There we go. Now, there's a bunch of these kind of problems. There's ones that you can pick for whatever games that you play. Well, I shouldn't say whatever games you play, but there's a good handful of different puzzles that are out there for people who play these games, who eventually go competitive with them. These are great ways to either learn competitive strategies or just to understand the game better. Yes. Now, Possibility Storm, probably one of my favorite recent additions to Magic, which was just video. Actually, no, it wasn't even videos. It was just posts on the MTG Goldfish website. Because they're celebrating the new set, they decided to go ahead and start doing more logic problems. And it was really cool because there's a lot of cool mechanics that they brought out. And that made these kind of puzzles even more interesting because it was a little bit trickier. Because they added a new way for you to win in a couple of different cards. They added different ways things interact. Because you had Exert, you had Treasure, you have Marionette. So there's a lot of ways that the game would potentially just end there, but it didn't always look apparent. Like, some of them were a little bit out there for lines of play. But we're actually at the end of the episode now. We rambled just long enough thanks to chess.
Nice. And I will throw one more thing in there. Hearthstone recently added a new expansion. which is the Boomsday Project, and within that expansion, they later came out with their solo player series, which is actually just a series of problems like this. Like, there's Lethal, which you have to kill your opponent. There's Survive, which you have to figure out how to heal yourself back up to 30 when you start at 1. And they just have a whole bunch, like board clear, stuff like that. And it's, if you have Hearthstone, this is a good way to test your logic.
I know that's how they would do... I think it was Duels of the Planeswalkers was how they first did that kind of system. It's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. The games aren't too expensive. They're pretty fun because you can just play through them.
Hearthstone is 100% free.
Oh yeah, that's the real benefit there. Duels of the Planeswalker isn't. You have to buy it. It's an actual game that was released on consoles and PC, so it actually has a price tag attached to it.
Yeah.
But plenty of ways to approach it. There's a few games where if you're interested, they're usually built into the electronic version. This is how you play the game. Here's some puzzles for you to figure out cool ways to play the game. So, yeah. Best way to approach it, try and use logic, try and use a flowchart, try and just systematically figure out how to solve your problems. And when all else fails, judge.
Judge.
Raise your hand. Judge.
And if there is no judge,
Cry.
claim you're a professional and be a judge. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, that's going to do it for tonight. So, again, I'm Lucas.
I'm Alec.
And that's Casual Experts. See
Night.
you next time.